They held 537 wins, but who's counting? Right, the most in Louisiana high school football history, second most in the United States in prep football history in this country. It's won 26 state championships, the most in Louisiana history by far. John Curtis is a three-time defending state champion. Of course, he also moonlights serving as an analyst on Friday Night Football on NOAA 38 and ABC 26, holding that other guy up. Curtis beat Lusher 48-14 this past Friday night, and they'll face LHSAA in a big game this coming Thursday night at Pan American Stadium in District 11 3A. Please give a warm quarterback club welcome to J.T. Curtis of John Curtis Christian.
Kenny, it's good to be here, and I've had several opportunities to come, and always enjoy being here. You know, a couple things that I think we ought to talk about before we get into our particular team is that, you know, football has some adages that never change. And one of them is that you're either going to get a little bit better or you're going to get a little bit worse. You never stay the same. If you coach football long enough, you recognize that it's so important to have your team motivated and understanding the goals that we set on a day-to-day basis for them to improve. And it's the last thing I say to our players is let's get a little bit better today. Second thing is, just because they're in the same uniform doesn't mean it's the same player. And that's one of the hardest things to get fans to understand. Just because they're in the purple and gold 89 doesn't mean it's the same 89 that played last year. Or if they're in the green and white 15, it's not the same guy that played number 15 last year. They change, and the players in the uniform make the plays. But one of the things that has changed in this community that I have really been surprised about is to recognize Jim Morris sitting on the other side of the table, analyzing a woulda, coulda, shoulda. I watched last night, but I'll say one thing, Coach. Keeping Mackle straight. You've done a good job of that. You don't let him get too far on that crazy stuff like he used to be. But I've enjoyed listening to Coach Mora, being an analyst at this point in time. And so it really goes to show you that things do change, and time has a way of kind of mellowing people out just a little bit, all of us. Our football team is 6-1. We're playing well. We've had some injuries that we're starting to get back. We have a challenge. Actually, it's a Thursday afternoon game at 3:30 at Pan American against a much improved LHSAA team. And then we have our last game of the season going into getting us ready to get into the playoffs. But we feel really good about how we are, where we are. We're improving defensively. We lost a lot of guys on the defensive side of the ball last year that were outstanding players. One that's playing for Jim Mora Jr. at UCLA, Kenny Young, who's just done extremely well this year. And of course, most of you all know about Malachi Dupree and the contribution he's made at LSU, and a number of other players. The young man that went to Stanford, Terrence Alexander, is playing extremely well for them as a starting nickelback and their second backup corner. And then Mitrell McGraw that went to Oregon was playing, then got injured, and they're going to apply for a hardship redshirt for him, which I think they'll probably get. So they're playing well. And anytime you lose that kind of quality of player, again, guys have got to step up and fill those shoes, and they're big shoes to fill. And it takes time, and it takes patience. And you've got to, as a coach, be sure that you recognize that the guy in that number is not necessarily the same athlete that was in it before. And so being patient and being able to bring guys along at a pace that they're comfortable with, because if you're not careful, it's not hard to overwhelm players and get him into a state of confusion. But if a player's confused, he can't play. I'd rather him relaxed. I'd rather him out there playing loose and just getting after the game. And that's one of the things that we try to teach our players. If you make a mistake, make it go at full speed. If you hit the wrong guy, hit him. And good things usually happen when you do that. But we think that we're on the road to being the kind of football team we want to be. We've got some good secondary people that are kind of keeping our team gelled together, and we feel good about those guys and how they're playing. And Miles Washington, who we moved from running back to quarterback last year, has continued to play quarterback for us. Dante Jones and Devon Ben, our two running backs, have really done well for us in terms of making plays beyond the line of scrimmage. And anybody that's in coaching can tell you that there are two types of runs with a running back. One is a lineman run. And those linemen run, unfortunately, don't get enough credit. Well, I want you to know that we do. If it's a lineman run, we make sure they know it's a lineman run. But then there's an opportunity for a back to make a back run. And that's when he takes a hold that's not there and progresses the ball somewhat downfield, or he gets into the secondary and he's able to make a secondary guy miss and pick up that extra 6 or 7 yards. So that's kind of where we're pushing our offense. That's where the strength of our team is. We feel really good about our offensive line is starting to come around and starting to gel. I'm sure most of you guys know our left tackle is a young man named Willie Allen, and Jake Charpentier is the right tackle. That are both big guys that will be recruited next year. They're both juniors, and they're starting to bring the offensive line along with them as the backs have been able to make plays. So we think we're on the right track. We're going to be in that select division, Division 1 of the select round, and what Coach White was saying, I think, again, holds true, especially in our division. There will be no soft spots. It's 1 through 12, and wherever you're seated, wherever you're going, whoever you're going to get in that first round is going to be capable of winning the ball game. So it's going to be a highly competitive, very difficult playoff bracket, but I think it's one that will draw great fan interest, and from that perspective, it's good. So we're looking forward to the playoffs and an opportunity to compete at a very high level, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that maybe you might have at this time.
Yeah. Coach, when the game Stands Tall was shot here in New Orleans, and it's about the De La Salle program out in California, there's a lot of similarities between that program and yours. So is there talk of having your program be made into a movie, and who would you want to be playing?
We tried to play Dylan. Well, that depends on who you are and what your opinion of me might be. We tried to play De La Salle a couple of years ago, and we just couldn't get together on the date. And that's one of the difficult things about playing teams that are outside of the area. We really like having an opportunity to play some teams from out of state. I think it measures our teams and our players against teams from Texas or teams from Florida, or teams from Alabama. And I think what we have learned is, and what we've known for a long time, but I think the nation is beginning to realize we can play with anybody in the country. It doesn't really make any difference. We can play. I'm not going to tell you we're going to win every time we play them, but we can compete with them. If you want my opinion, I think Kevin Costner would fall right in. Yes, sir.
JT, what's the elephant in the room with Mr. Henderson?
Kenny, you want to answer that question? You know, I really don't know. Let me say this to you. I try to take the high road through all of this. I try to do the very best that I can with whatever God has put in my place to work with on a daily basis. I think there was some difficulty with the split. I think that caused some controversy. As you read in the paper, there's some difficulty going on with some lawsuits, maybe with some things that were mismanaged in terms of our responsibility that we're going to take a hit for. And I think those two things were the catalyst that brought the executive committee to a point where they are now. You hate to see anybody lose their job. You hate to see anybody not be able to manage a situation. But I wish Kenny the very best, and I had a good relationship with him, and look forward to the new commissioner trying to bring us back together if at all possible.
Coach, besides football, I don't know if anybody realizes that the last couple of years, your other programs like baseball, track, wrestling, other sports have either won state or been state finalists. Do you think that if they don't get back, the select and non-select, that eventually you all in the private domain will eventually just incorporate and become a separate entity from the LHSAA? Is there plans for that?
Well, there's some problems with that. And really there's some logistical problems that we would have to address as a group. Here's my thinking, and perhaps others would disagree, but I think regardless of the association you're in, you've got to do what's fair for everybody. You're not going to make a rule that's going to please everyone, but if it's fair and it's applied equally, then you're able to at least get through the situation and live with it. And if we had an association that was from Baton Rouge and down, we would have a sustainable association if we split in all the sports. But then you have those teams in Shreveport and in Monroe and in Lake Charles and in Alexandria that are really going to struggle. I mean, you look at Holy Savior Menard, St. Frederick's in Monroe, you're looking at Loyola of Shreveport, you're looking at Evangel, you're looking at Washita Christian, you look at Calvary Baptist. Those are good programs that we would have to try to accommodate in our scheduling, which would make it difficult and make it more expensive, but I think it would only be fair. So there's more to it than just saying, well, we'll just form our own association. We have to consider every person, every young person, man, woman, boy, girl, that competes and say, let's give these kids an opportunity to compete on the athletic field. I'm going to get in a soapbox 1 minute, Kenny. I don't want to take too much of coach's time. Just let me give you a theory here. I had the opportunity to speak in Los Angeles several years ago, and I was there for 2 days. And I was talking to a coach who told me, he said, you know, coach, he said, we got a real gang problem out here. He said, we really do. He said, we try to keep our kids involved in the program. We try to keep as many as we can, but it's really tough for us. And as I got into that conversation, this is what I began to realize. Let me tell you, a gang is no more than a team. They have a name, they have colors, and they have a purpose. And they're directed by somebody. And that's what athletics should be. We want to keep as many kids involved in what we're doing on the athletic field as humanly possible. We don't want to divide ourselves. We don't want to be pushing kids away. We want to encompass kids. We want to bring them in so that we can be the positive influence in their life. I don't want them wearing bandanas. I want them wearing a baseball cap. I don't want to be the Blood or the Crips. I want them to be the Patriots or the Knights or the Rebels or the Raiders or whatever that is. And so I just think that whatever we do, we've got to try to remember we're here to serve the young people of the state of Louisiana. And whatever we have to do to keep as many of those kids involved as possible, that's what we need to do. I didn't mean to preach, but I feel that way. That's the way I feel. Anyone else? Guys, thank you all. I enjoyed being here.